Now that devotees, may my home spirit Supreme Buddha Dhammānupassanā. Now I would like respectfully in my 𝗵𝗂 to conduct the program today. House 𝗵𝗂. Let's stand up from our seats and invite 𝗵𝗂.
Naudai, everyone. Before we start the program, we'll go for refuge and then take the precepts and then start. So everyone chant with me. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Saṅghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Dutiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Saṅghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Saṅghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. To observe the 5 precepts, repeat after me. I observe the precept of abstaining from killing beings.
Abstaining from killing beings.
I observe the precept of abstaining from stealing.
Abstaining from stealing.
I observe the precept of abstaining from sexual misconduct.
Abstaining from sexual misconduct.
I observe the precept of abstaining from telling lies.
Abstaining from telling lies.
I observe the precept of abstaining from taking intoxicating drinks and drugs with the refuge of the noble triple gem. I observe these precepts for happiness in this life, for rebirth in heaven, to escape from the sufferings of samsara. May it help me and be a blessing. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So, dear lay devotees, so today we're going to be covering another, the second last part of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. We've covered, just to recap, we've covered Kayanupassana, we've covered Vedananupassana. That means so contemplating the body, contemplating feelings, then Chittanupassana, contemplation of the mind, and then now we're on the final part, which is Dhammānupassana. And we said last week, even though we're talking about Dhammānupassana, none of us are really doing Dhammānupassana because this is the final step. We're just exchanging words. We're just talking about something that we might not have a 100% idea about, because to get an idea of what we're supposed to be thinking or what's supposed to be happening, someone needs to have developed their mindfulness to a point where they can practically see what's happening, or they can practically see contemplation of the Dhamma, or contemplation of these things that arise. So this is something that's like final step, where at the stage where we're trying to practice something to be able to practice Satipaṭṭhāna. That means we're practicing something to come to practicing Satipaṭṭhāna. So, like for example, today we're going to be talking about Bojjhaṅga, which is factors that help to become enlightened, factors that help someone to realize the Four Noble Truths. That's what it means to become enlightened. If someone becomes enlightened, then that means, the definition is that they realized the Four Noble Truths. So these are factors that help someone to do that, help someone to become enlightened. But before we discuss that, I want to recap and try to remind you, why is it someone even cares about developing Satipaṭṭhāna? So when we talk about any of these parts, what's the reason that we care about developing our mindfulness? We care about developing our wisdom. What's the reason for that? Now the Supreme Buddha teaches, and I want you guys to read this very, very carefully and try to understand what the Supreme Buddha is teaching here, or what the Supreme is trying to explain here. So I share screens here. Can you guys read this? So this is the purpose, this is the reason why the Supreme Buddha teaches the four foundations of mindfulness, or Sattara Satipaṭṭhāna, in the first place. And the Supreme Buddha teaches, monks, there's a path. There's a path which helps purify beings. So what does that mean? It means it helps people get rid of defilements, things. So there's a path that helps get rid of anger, that helps get rid of jealousy, that helps get rid of ill will, trying to take revenge. All of these, there's a path for that. And this path also helps us to get rid of sorrow and lamentation. That means all these feelings of sadness, it helps to get rid of that. To get rid of pain and grief. This path also gets rid of pain and grief. And it helps us to realize Nibbana. That means it helps us to realize the Four Noble Truths. So this path, if we take it as this sentence, solves all the problems in our life. If someone can travel this path, there's no more crying, there's no more getting upset because someone yelled at us, there's no more sorrow, there's no more sadness, there's no more anger, there's no more ill will, there's nothing. You just have a peaceful, serene, calm life. That's if someone fulfills this, whatever this path is. And then the Buddha explains, this path is called the four foundations of mindfulness, Sattara Satipaṭṭhāna. And then the Buddha explains, he explains that this goes on further down, but I took one part of that, and the Buddha explains, what are these four? Here there's a monk who practices 𝗪-𝗪𝗪𝗪, which is contemplating the body as a body. And he does it, and there's two important words here at the end. He puts away covetousness and conflicts for the world. So in Pali it says, abhijja domanassa. And in Sinhala we say, alim getim duru karala, which means covetousness means this person gets rid of overly attaching to things, and he gets rid of conflicts that arise in this world. That means after getting rid of, after removing over attachment, and after removing like getting overly angry, then that monk or that person can practice 𝗪-𝗪𝗪𝗪. So this is the step before even coming to Satipaṭṭhāna, which is getting rid of over attachment and getting rid of getting conflicted with others or things in the world. Only someone who gets rid of these two things, or has suppressed these two, can then practice 𝗪-𝗪𝗪𝗪. See, it says here a monk practices contemplating the body as a body after having put away. So after having done this, he practices. So this is this is the first step that we try to come to. This is why someone practices or tries to develop a thought of loving kindness. That's why we practice metta. Why? What are we trying to get rid of? That second part, domanas. We're trying to get rid of conflicts that arise in our life. So, and then we practice, so last week we discussed impermanence. Now in Satipaṭṭhāna, it doesn't give that formula of this is how you should reflect on impermanence. But why do we practice that? To get rid of over-attachment. We're trying to get the foundation to practice the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So we're at the very, very early stage. We're at the very, very early step. So we need to have a full idea of what the path is, how do we even come to the path before we even practice the path. So the first step is to get rid of over-attachment by seeing things or trying to see things as impermanent, trying to see things as things that change, things that bring suffering. And then we try to get rid of conflicts, getting rid of anger, trying to suppress anger, trying to be compassionate. With someone with those good qualities is someone who is suitable to practice Satipaṭṭhāna. Why? Because in Satipaṭṭhāna, the Supreme Buddha is teaching mindfulness as Samma Sati, which means right mindfulness. Now, there are all kinds of mindfulness in the world. There's all kinds of paths to develop mindfulness. So for example, someone can think of just a single syllable and develop mindfulness. When you guys are watching a TV show, that's mindfulness. Why your mindfulness is on that TV show. When someone calls you, when someone tries to get your attention, you might not hear that person. Why? Because your mind is occupied with watching that TV show. That's also mindfulness. But developing mindfulness in those ways will never ever take us to our goal. And what's the goal of Satipaṭṭhāna? That's the first part the Buddha explains. To purify beings, to get rid of anger, ill will, lust, jealousy, all these things that make our mind impure. And then to get rid of sorrow and grief, to get rid of pain, and to attain Nibbana. That's the goal of Satipaṭṭhāna. That's the goal of the Supreme Buddha's teachings. There's no other goal. It's not to just send someone to heaven. It's not just to send someone to a good place. It's not to make someone look beautiful in their next life. It's not to make just this life happy, just to have a good experience. That's not what the Buddha's teachings is about. So, because all those things existed before the Buddha arose in the world. People knew ways to go to heaven. People knew ways to have a good life. People knew ways to develop mindfulness. People knew ways to develop samadhi or concentration. But none of those ways, none of those teachings ever took someone to Nibbana, never took someone to the complete removal of pain and suffering, to the complete removal of anything that makes the mind impure. So Satipaṭṭhāna is something that we develop first and foremost to attain Nibbana, to get rid of all suffering. That's the goal of Satipaṭṭhāna. That's the reason if someone practices or wants to practice Satipaṭṭhāna, that's the reason we should be practicing it. To develop mindfulness and wisdom, to see the true reality of the world, to see the Four Noble Truths, and to realize those Four Noble Truths. That's why a Buddha teaches the teachings, teaches the Dhamma, for no other reason. Now, with that understanding, we can learn that once someone has developed mindfulness to a certain stage, once his mindfulness is very, very powerful, he comes to Dhammānupassanā. He comes to seeing certain aspects of his mind that are far beyond any of our understandings. So if you guys remember in Kaya-Anupassana, the first one was Ānāpānasati, which means someone becomes mindful of their breathing. And we understood how difficult it was to even practice that for a few minutes without our mind going somewhere else. Now that's just normal. That's just something. That's something like this. One of the very, very early stages. Just trying to keep mindfulness on our breath. And that also is difficult. So coming to Dhammānupassanā, if someone is at Dhammānupassanā, his mindfulness is developed so much that he can see, for example, ill will or lust arising in his mind. That's how mindful he is. He sees sleepiness arising in his mind. And we talked about that last week. And then the Buddha teaches, which is what we're covering this week, that he sees some factors that arise within him that help him to realize the Four Noble Truths. And the Buddha teaches there are 7 factors that help someone to realize the Four Noble Truths. So I'm going to share screens again. And the Buddha teaches, these are called Satta Bojjhaṅga. So this means, Satta means 7. Then Bojjha or Bodhi or Bojjha means enlightenment. And then Anga means factors. So there are 7 enlightenment factors. And what do these 7 enlightenment factors do? They help someone to realize the Four Noble Truths. So if someone has these 7 factors within them, his next step is to realize the Four Noble Truths. His next step is enlightenment. So this is at the very, very end. This is like the very, very final stages. If someone is developing these, he's near the very, very end stage of his path. Does that make sense? So this is the factors that develop before someone becomes enlightened, before someone realizes the Four Noble Truths. And these 7 factors start with sati, which is mindfulness. So this person's mindfulness has developed, meaning all 4 foundations of mindfulness has developed within him. And he has now a mindfulness that these 4 foundations has developed. Does that make sense? So his mindfulness is there to the point where he knows that his mindfulness has developed. This sounds like we're just saying these same words over and over again, but that's why I explained this is at the very, very final stage. His mindfulness is very, very powerful already. And we talked about developing this mindfulness starts with practice, starts with baby steps, starts with practicing first, really, Kaya-Nupassana. Being aware, bringing attention to what someone is doing, what they're doing at this moment. So practicing that slowly develops our mindfulness. If someone practices that consistently, they'll start noticing, my mindfulness has gotten sharper. My mindfulness is better now. They can focus on work better. Those are just additional benefits, okay? That's not the goal. Don't forget the goal. Someone being able to focus on their task is something like an additional benefit. That's not the reason why the Buddha teaches practice mindfulness, but you get that benefit as well. You can concentrate easier. You can practice things better. So his mindfulness, the person with this first enlightenment factor, which is sati, his mindfulness has developed to the point where he knows he has a certain mindfulness. Does that make sense? And if at any point there's a part that you don't understand, you should ask. That way you don't have any doubts afterwards. Is this what that meant? Is that what this meant? Is this part clear? Then, now this is, do you guys remember at the very, very beginning, we said meditation, you can split it into 2 groups, which is samatha and vidarshana. Samatha means serenity. And then vidarshana means insight. So you have 2 basic types of samatha, serenity, and then vidarshana, which means insight. Serenity meditation means that meditation helps him to calm his mind, helps him to obtain samadhi, helps him to obtain concentration. That's what samatha does. Okay? Now, samatha meditations have existed even before the Buddha. For example, metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha, all those are samatha. Even asubha, just the first part of asubha, or repulsiveness, reflection on repulsiveness, that was there before the Supreme Buddha. Even anapanasati was there before the Supreme Buddha arose in the world. But only the samatha portion. They can have some concentration by practicing breathing in and out. What's special about vidarshana is that second part, that part only exists when there's a Supreme Buddha in the world. That's the part that leads someone to enlightenment. So now this sati, this mindfulness, is not in the samatha portion. We're not talking about a mindfulness that leads to concentration now. Now we're talking about a mindfulness that leads to insight, that leads to enlightenment, okay? That's the difference here. Right now we're practicing a mindfulness that leads to just samatha, leads to concentration. When we practice, okay, I'm moving my hands around, not thinking like that, but bringing attention to what you're doing. Let's say you guys are sitting down right now, and you bring mindfulness to the fact that you're sitting down. You're not thinking, I'm sitting down, I'm sitting down, I'm sitting down. You're just mindful. You bring attention to the fact that you're sitting down. What are we practicing then? We're practicing mindfulness that leads to concentration, that leads to samadhi, that leads to serenity, the samatha portion, okay? Then when we talk about sati in the Bojjhangas or in the enlightenment factors, we're talking about a mindfulness that leads someone to enlightenment, okay? There's a big difference there. And that difference we should understand. But this is the first quality that this person develops, that this person has in order to realize the Dhamma. He has a mindfulness that he has developed the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Then we come to the second part. And this is Dhammavicaya Bojjhanga. And now Dhammavicaya means, I'll move this to the side, but Dhammavicaya means he has the ability to investigate the Dhamma now. He has the ability to see things in their true form now. So what does he see in their true form? What does he see things? He sees things as that are impermanent as impermanent. So he's seeing the final stages now. He sees impermanence as impermanence. He sees non-self as non-self. What does that mean? He sees things, for example, things that we take as me, mine, or myself. He sees that they're truly non-self. There's nothing that was within our power here. So take a simple example. Even though we know this hair grows old, decays, falls off, if I were to cut all your hair off right now and make you all bald, you guys would get angry with me. Why is that? Why do you guys get angry? You cut my hair. That's my hair. So even though we know this hair is something that grows old, that falls off, that grows white, we take that as mine. It's me. This is me. If I was to hit you, you would say, "This, you're hitting me." If I was to take something from you, you say, "You're stealing from me." Okay? Whether we know that's not true or not, that doesn't matter. Right now, our view, whether we like it or not, is there's a me, there's a mine, there's a self. That's our view. Whether you like it or not, that's your view. So this person, when he's developing this factor, he's starting to see that there is no self. There's nothing that we can control. He's actually seeing this now. We're not just talking about it, he's seeing it. He's seeing things that are suffering as suffering. He's seeing things that will bring that are truly suffering is suffering. Now, we don't have that. If anyone here has children and they love them, you don't see that. Why? Because that's something that creates a bond, in the future that will bring guaranteed suffering in the future. Not just your children, anything we desire, anything we like, all those things will bring suffering. But there are lots of things we like. Everyone here has a favorite food. Everyone here probably has a favorite TV show. Everyone here has a favorite outfit. So what is this person? His mindfulness is so strong. He's truly seeing, not just outfits and food. He's truly seeing things that are suffering as suffering. His whole worldview is changing. And he sees the most important part. He sees cause and effect. If someone does not see cause and effect, they can never, ever become enlightened. This is the true goal of the Dhamma, to see cause and effect, to see 𝗵𝗵𝗂𝗪. There's a cause and there is an effect. There is a reason we are born. There's a reason we suffer. Why is that? There's birth. What's the reason for birth? There's a reason we're born. It's because we had karma to be born. We had karma to be born in this human world. You all had karma to have, some people have long hair, some people have short hair, some people have brown eyes, some people have blue eyes, some people are light-skinned, some people are dark-skinned, some people are short, some people are tall. All those is based on your karma. If we didn't have karma, we wouldn't be born. And there's a reason we had karma in the first place. The reason we had karma is because we clung to things. We cling to views, we cling to sensual pleasures, and there's a reason we clung. And I'm giving the very short version here, is because we craved for things. There's a reason we craved for things. It's because we felt things. When we feel something, when we feel a pleasant feeling, we crave for those things. And then if we feel an unpleasant feeling, we get conflicted with those things. There's a reason we felt. There's a reason we feel at this very moment. There's a reason you feel that something. Why? Because you have the 6 senses. You have eyes, you have ears, you have a nose, you have a tongue, you have a body, and you have a mind. If you didn't have any of those things, you wouldn't feel anything. There's a reason we have those things, and that's name and form. And we discussed this before. There's a reason we have name and form. It's because we have consciousness. There's a reason we have consciousness. It's because of formations, something we call sanskara. And there's a reason we have those sanskara or formations, is because we have ignorance. We haven't realized the 4 Noble Truths. So that cycle repeats. Avidya patya sankara, sankara patya vijnanam, vijnana patya namarupam, namarupa patya salayatana, and so forth, all the way down to birth and suffering. That's dependent origination, very, very briefly. So what does this person see? He's seeing dependent origination now. He's not just talking about it. It's not just words. He's seeing cause and effect. He's seeing that. And then what happens? When he sees that, in order to maintain this view, to see him seeing impermanence as impermanence, non-self as non-self, suffering as suffering, and cause and effect, he needs a certain effort. It doesn't just auto happen. He needs effort there. And then virya, that 3rd factor or effort, arises in him. Now, effort is described in 4 steps. And this is something you should definitely know, because everywhere the description of virya is the same. Effort is 4 things. First, the first one is to remove an arisen defilement. So to remove an impurity that has arisen, that has come. So I'll give a very, very simple example. Imagine right now you're angry. So what is that? Anger is a defilement that has arisen in us. Now we're angry at this moment. I made you all bald and now you guys are mad at me. So that's arisen in you. And then what do you have to do? You have to now get rid of that anger. So that's the first step. Getting rid of anger that's arisen in us. Anger that arose. Then what's the second step? Then you guys go look in the mirror and then you get angry again. So in order to prevent that, you have to prevent anger that hasn't arisen from coming. So any defilements in your mind that hasn't come yet, you have to prevent those from coming too. That's the second step. So the first step is getting rid of something we have. The second step is preventing those bad things from coming again. And then what do you do? Then you have to think, no, so I'm going to taught us this. And then you have to provide some kind of wholesome thought, some kind of wholesome quality. It could be loving kindness, compassion, whatever it is. You develop a 𝗙ص, we say something wholesome. That's the third step. So a wholesome quality or wholesome 𝗙ص that hasn't arisen, you arise that. Like that means you bring that to be. So for example, you get angry, you remove anger, you stop anger from coming, and then you create a mind of loving kindness. Then what do you have to do? You can't just create it and do nothing. You have to develop it further. You make it more powerful. That's the fourth step. So whatever wholesome quality we have, we try to develop that. That's the 4 stages. Does that make sense? Does anyone have any questions on that? Mahinder, that makes sense? Sandhya? And then I can't see your name. Rooney, that makes sense? Okay, I'm assuming everyone understands that. So now his effort is not just to keep a thought of loving kindness. His effort here is to maintain, is to remove defilements that arise. He's literally getting rid of anger now. This is not just we're suppressing it. He's actually getting rid of anger. Imagine in your pocket there's garbage, okay? Imagine right now if you put your hand in your pocket, there's garbage. When we practice loving kindness, what we're doing is every time garbage tries to come out of our pocket, we kind of push it back in and say, it's not there, it's not there. That's what we're doing. This person is literally taking out the garbage and throwing it out. His effort is literally abandoning anger. He's actually abandoning it. He's getting rid of it now. That's his effort. This person who has these factors, he's getting rid of this. He's getting rid of jealousy. And as he does that, now you guys smile as I said this. When we talk about literally getting rid of anger, if we were able to do that, wouldn't that bring us so much happiness? Wouldn't that be something amazing? If you could see within yourself, piece by piece, anger is getting removed, you're actually cleaning it out, that would bring us a lot of happiness. So that's what happens. The fourth factor is piti, or joy. Joy arises, happiness arises. Why? He's literally seeing, he's getting rid of anger. So as he abandons these defilements, a happiness arises. Hey, I'm actually getting rid of this. And that joy is something that we can't compare with anything we've experienced. Why? Because our joy arises from sensual pleasures. Our joy arises from seeing something, from hearing something, from smelling something, from tasting something, from touching something, from thinking something. Beyond those, we haven't experienced a lot of joy in our life. So this joy is something that arises from seeing, hey, I'm actually getting rid of these bad things. I'm actually cleaning out my pocket. There's gonna be no more garbage anymore. And that joy arises because of that effort he has. He's removing defilements. He's seeing the true nature of things. And then as that happens, as his mind gets filled with joy, his body gets filled with joy, his mind and his body become calm. So this joy is explained as something that, if you guys can think of the happiest moment in your life, try to imagine something even more than that. This joy spreads throughout your entire body. It goes all the way, it's explained as it goes Not a single inch of your body is not without joy. All the way down to your fingertips, all the way down to your toes, your entire body is suffused with joy, suffused with happiness, suffused with a pleasure that's far beyond anything we've experienced. And as that happens, as our mind becomes joyful, as our body experiences that happiness, our mind becomes calm. So tranquility arises. So our mind becomes tranquil, our body becomes tranquil. So don't forget, this happiness doesn't lead to birth. Okay, this happiness, this joy, this is a factor that helps someone to realize the Four Noble Truths. If he doesn't have this joy ever, he can never realize the Four Noble Truths, because all of these factors are needed. He needs effort. This effort doesn't just lead to developing metta or loving kindness. This leads to enlightenment. This joy leads to enlightenment. This tranquility, this calmness of the body and mind leads to enlightenment. So if he doesn't get this, he can't progress further. So the person at this stage of Dhammānupassanā, I want to be clear again, when he has this mindfulness, he's aware, I have this mindfulness. This mindfulness that will lead to enlightenment is within me. He sees it. If it's not there, he also sees that. And then he has mindfulness and he develops it. When he has the ability to see impermanence and permanence, non-self as non-self, he sees that factor within himself. That's this portion of Dhammānupassanā, okay? That's what he's seeing. His mindfulness is seeing, hey, this factor is also within me. Dhammavicaya is also within me right now. Then this might collapse and he has to start all over again. But he sees this factor arising in him. Then when he has effort to abandon literally defilements, he sees that as well. With mindfulness, he's seeing this. So he sees, okay, effort, this factor, virya, that enlightenment factor is also within me right now. If it's not there, he also sees that. So right now, do we have any of these? Do we have any of these 7 or 6 so far we've discussed? Do we have sati or dhammavicaya or virya? We have none of these. But that doesn't mean we're here, okay? Right now, we know we have none of these because we've never even practiced any of these. This person is not just saying, I don't have it because I didn't do it. This person is seeing, okay, it's not there yet. And when it arises, he instantly knows, okay, right now I have sati. Right now I have dhammavicaya. Right now I have virya. Right now I have piti. Right now I have pasada. He's seeing them as they arise, and as they disappear, he sees that as well. So this, he sees, okay, now my body is tranquil. That tranquility he sees is something that will lead to enlightenment. And then as his mind and his body become tranquil, his mind gets concentrated. That means his mind gets focused on one thing. Now, this is not concentration like concentrating on a TV show or an assignment. This concentration is something that leads to enlightenment. This is, now we're talking about jhana, which is his mind is so concentrated, his mind is so concentrated that he's in, I don't know how to explain, we talked about this before. He has jhanas, the first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana, and he might even have arupa jhana. But so the Buddha developed to become enlightened. The Supreme Buddha came to the fourth jhana, and then he looked at past lives. And then he looked at the rising of beings based on the birth and death of beings based on their karma. Then he looked at removing defilements. So this samadhi is something that leads to enlightenment. Not to Buddhahood, to just getting rid of, to understanding and realizing the Four Noble Truths, okay? Don't get that confused. This won't make you a Supreme Buddha. This just leads you to become an arahant, someone who has understood the Four Noble Truths. This concentration is something that's beyond our understanding. Someone has to practically do this and they'll understand. So as his mind gets concentrated, so now he has a joy, he has tranquility, but what is he seeing? Remember, he has Dhammavicaya, this factor. So he has Dhammavicaya and he sees impermanence as impermanence. He sees non-self as non-self. He sees suffering as suffering, and he sees cause and effect. So now he has concentration. He has samadhi. But he doesn't just think, I have samadhi now. What does he see? Hey, this samadhi has a cause. This samadhi is an effect of something. There's a cause and effect for this samadhi. There's a cause and effect for this concentration. This samadhi's concentration is impermanent. He's seeing this. This concentration, this joy, this tranquility, these are all impermanent. These all arose due to a cause. None of these are within my control. He sees non-self there as well. And he sees if I cling to these, if I attach myself to these, if I happily accept these, then that will bring me suffering. So he sees even here at this moment, he's seeing suffering as well. And he's doing that with what? With sati, with mindfulness. So as he does that, as he doesn't cling to these, because if he clings to these, then he loses this. He loses Dhammavicaya and he falls and it disappears again. So as he has these factors, he sees all of them arose due to a cause. All of these arose due to a reason. And they're all impermanent. And as he does that, does he cling to his samadhi? Would he get attached if he sees that as impermanent? Would he get attached to that calmness in his body and mind? Would he get attached to that joy in his mind? Would he get attached to any of these things? No. So he comes to upekkha. He comes to equanimity. He doesn't cling to any of those things. He doesn't get attached to any of those things. So this equanimity also leads to realizing the Four Noble Truths. So this is the final stage. So his mindfulness here is so powerful, and he doesn't cling to these factors because this factor, Dhammavicaya Sambojjhanga, or this factor, him seeing impermanence as impermanence, seeing cause and effect, helps him to come to equanimity. Because really most of our times, even when we get a small samadhi, just from samatha, just from practicing, concentrating our mind on something very, very small, a lot of people get attached to those things. A lot of people cling to those things. They say, so sometimes people meditate and their mind becomes very, very calm. They attain a small concentration, a small samadhi, and they think, and they get a very, very happy feeling. It's a very, very pleasant feeling. And when they experience that pleasant feeling, when they sit down to meditate again, they think, okay, I need to obtain that samadhi again. So they sit down thinking, I want to concentrate my mind. But will that ever happen? As soon as he sits down thinking, I'm going to obtain samadhi, he can't ever obtain samadhi. Why? Because there's a cause and effect for samadhi. So let's say someone's practicing anapanasati. When he practices anapanasati, what does he have to do in the first stages? He has to just focus on his breath coming in. When there's a breath coming in, he knows there's a breath coming in. When there's a breath going out, he knows there's a breath going out. Okay? And then based on him seeing that, his mind gets concentrated. He obtains samadhi. Okay? So what's the cause there? The cause is him focusing on the breath coming in and the breath coming out. Because of that, as he's focusing, he gets samadhi. So cause and effect. Then someone sits down, does anapanasati, and thinks, I want to get samadhi. And he's sitting down and he thinks, why won't my mind get concentrated? Why won't my mind get concentrated? What's not there? The cause isn't there. What does he have to do? He has to forget all those things, all those thoughts, and he has to go back to focusing on the breath coming in and the breath coming out. If he does that, then the cause will arise and he will get the effect, which is samadhi. Does that make sense? So that is something, like that feeling is something people People, once they experience it, they really, really crave. They want to have that feeling again because it's not like sensual pleasures. So the reason people cling to those things is because they don't see they don't see cause and effect. So here, this person comes to upeksha, that means he comes to equanimity only because he has this factor. He's seeing that there's no point clinging to this samadhi. There's no point clinging to this tranquility. There's no point clinging to this joy. All of those are impermanent. There's nothing to grasp there. So as he develops these 7 factors further and further, then he starts seeing the Four Noble Truths. He starts seeing suffering as suffering. He starts seeing that. He starts seeing the reason. Why is the reason that suffering exists? Is because people crave for things. Because of craving, people cling to this, people get attached to things. It's because of this craving that we have suffering. He sees the second noble truth. And then he sees, if someone is able to get rid of craving, then they can get rid of suffering, because the cause of suffering is craving. If someone gets rid of craving, then they get rid of the cause. And then he sees that the way to get rid of craving is by practicing the Noble Eightfold Path. And his path, his Noble Eightfold Path, comes to fulfillment. And as he does that, his realization of the Four Noble Truths comes to fulfillment as well. Now, this is something we're just saying with words, but this person sees that. This person is seeing that through mindfulness that he's developed up to this point. He's seeing the Four Noble Truths. And those Four Noble Truths are the final things, the final stage of Dhammānupassanā, which we'll discuss next week. But in order to get to that step, he has to develop these 7 factors. Does that make sense? So this is very, very final stage. This is the step before coming to realizing the Four Noble Truths. Now, does anyone have any questions on these 7? Any part that doesn't make sense, doesn't understand?
I was just answered. Does it
Yes.
have to be developed in order? Or like, for example,
So it's not like you can sit down and meditate and think, okay, I want sati to develop. I want virya to develop. I want Dhammavicaya to come now. It doesn't work like that. As this person has developed his mindfulness, then at a certain stage, as he starts seeing what we call a self, as he starts seeing that, then these factors arise in him. And then with that mindfulness he's developed, then he quickly understands, okay, there's sati within me. There's Dhammavicaya within me. There's virya within me. So he doesn't just sit down and meditate and he experiences a happy feeling and he thinks, hey, I wonder if that was preeti within me. This doesn't work like that. This is his mindfulness. It's like he's literally, we talked last week, he sees sleepiness arise. Okay, he's seeing that. He's seeing ill will arise. He's seeing restlessness arise. He's seeing those things arise in his mind. That's like, his mindfulness is way, way beyond anything we can imagine. His mindfulness is very, very powerful. And if at any point you think, my mindfulness is very powerful too, I can do this too, then sit down and try to focus on your breathing for 10 minutes straight, and then tell me, Sayamasa, my mindfulness is very, very powerful, okay? So our mindfulness, even if someone is able to sit down and focus on their breathing for, let's say, 2 hours, he's still samatha. He's still in just constant, he's still in that part. In order to come to vidarshana, he has to come to seeing what we call a self. He has to come to seeing the notion of self. That can only come through a Supreme Buddhist teaching. So before the Supreme Buddha arose in the world, people could focus their minds and just concentrate on things for hours and hours. There's all kinds of yogis and all kinds of people who did meditation. Those people existed. Those people still exist, even outside of a Buddha's teachings, even before a Supreme Buddha arose. There are people who practice loving kindness before a Buddha arose. They developed that way before then. But none of those led to the goal. None of those led to that, the reason a Buddha arises. Like, none of those led to the goal of Nibbana. None of those led to abandoning anger. He had a good life, that life. He wasn't angry. He lived in peace. But then he went to the Brahma world, and then what happened? As soon as that karma is over, he falls back down. And then it happens again and again and again and again. Only a Buddha arises to teach that second part, vidarshana, which is seeing that self, seeing that what we think is a self, seeing is what we think is non-self, like what we consider not ours. Does that make sense? Now, have you guys ever read Satipaṭṭhāna Sutta? In Satipaṭṭhāna Sutta, it always says again and again, iti ajjataṃ va bahiddhā va 𝗪𝗵𝗵𝗁 𝗪𝗵𝗲. It says that part everywhere, whether it's anapanasati, whether it's idiya, which is whether it's focusing on the postures, whether it's focusing on what you're doing at the moment, whether it's focusing on the parts within this body, whether it's focusing on the elements, it always says the same thing. No matter what route you take, you come to the same place. So it's not seeing, bringing mindfulness to your body is something that existed before Buddha. Seeing repulsiveness of this body is something that existed before a Buddha. Bringing mindfulness to the breath is something that existed before a Buddha. But that final part, that iti ajjataṃ va bahiddhā va, that part only exists when there's a Buddha. That's the special part, because every single part comes to that. Even Dhammānupassanā, even Cittanupassana, even Vedanānupassana, all of those, the final goal is coming to there. So someone does it, either sees what we call a self established on the body, he sees what we call the notion of self, either by establishing on feelings. Either he sees what we call the notion of self established on seeing how the mind is behaving, or he sees what we call the notion of self established on mental phenomenon, or Dhamma. I don't know how to explain that. Mental phenomenon. That's why it's called 4 foundations of mindfulness. Does it make sense? So what he uses to see the notion of self is different. Someone uses Kāyanupassana, someone uses Vedanānupassana. But in every single part, all they do is develop what we call mindfulness. That's what we're trying to do right now. We're trying to develop our mindfulness just a little tiny bit. Once someone practices that further and further, then their mindfulness gets more powerful and more powerful. So understand, in Satipaṭṭhāna Sutta, until these enlightenment factors, nowhere in any of the sutta, in any part of the sutta, is the word samadhi mentioned. Nowhere. Nowhere does the Buddha ever talk about samadhi until he comes to this part. So here the Buddha, so samadhi existed way before a Buddha arose. So the Buddha realized samadhi is not the reason someone becomes enlightened. It's needed, but mindfulness and wisdom, that's what develops as someone practices Satipaṭṭhāna. That's why it's called Satipaṭṭhāna. He's developing his mindfulness. Mindfulness is what we need to develop. And as someone does that, he can get samadhi. That's like an additional benefit. But don't go doing this thinking I need to be able to sit down for 2 hours and have a pleasant feeling. That's not what this is about. This is about slowly in our lives developing mindfulness. So someone has a question, do arahants have samadhi all the time? So you can say arahants have arahant samadhi, not the samadhi we're talking about, but they have mindfulness to a certain extent. They have not samadhi like they're sitting down and their mind is constant, not that kind of samadhi, because there is mentioned they sometimes sit down and they meditate. They're obtaining samadhi through that, but their mind doesn't go to defilements. Does that make sense? So their mind is always with something wholesome. Why? Because there's no defilements. Defilements can't arise. So they're constantly in, how can you say, their life is very, very blissful. Why? Imagine anger doesn't ever arise. Imagine jealousy doesn't ever arise. We see a car and we think, wow, what a nice car. I wish I had money to buy that. We see a nice house and we think, wow, I wish I had money to buy a house like that. We have so much craving, so much longing for things. But imagine none of that was there. Then your life is completely free from, why? Because it's nothing to get angry about, there's nothing to get jealous about. There's none of those. Your life is complete bliss. That's why it always says, Sukhino vata arahanto. Indeed, an arahant has a very blissful life. He has no defilements. And then someone asked, Swayamvasa, can you please explain the 4 steps of virya a little more? So, in this part of Dhammānupassanā, the virya or the effort we're talking about is the effort that leads to enlightenment, okay? So none of us have that. But in general, when we talk about virya, we're talking about, so the first step is abandoning a defilement, okay? That's why I gave a very, very simple example, something you can remember, where I shave all your heads. Then you get mad, okay? Anger arises. How dare you shave my head? How dare you cut my hair? Okay? So then that's the first step is what? Getting rid of the anger that has arisen, okay? Now, it doesn't have to be anger. It could be anything. It could be jealousy. Someone gets a promotion at work and you think, why? I'm supposed to get that. That's jealousy. Someone succeeds and you get angry at that. You're jealous at that. So whatever defilement is there, you first remove that defilement. That's the first step of virya, okay? Abandoning a defilement that has arisen. And then the second step is now, okay, now let's say you got rid of anger. Now you have to prevent anger from coming up again, because anger isn't gone. It's just, you've just gotten rid of it for the moment. You've kind of hidden it with a cloth. You put it in another room and lock the door. But anger's still there. It might break open the door and come. So now you have to prevent that anger from coming back. You have to prevent another defilement from arising. That's the second step. Okay? And then the third step is now our mind is free from a defilement, but now it has to be occupied with something. So what does this person do? He brings a wholesome quality, we say kusalayak, to his mind. That could be metta, that could be karuna, that could be buddhanussati, that could be iriyapada, that could be sampajana, that could be vedanānupassana, cittanupassana, whatever it is, he brings some kind of kusalayak to his mind. And here we're talking about kusala, like very, very basic, wholesome thing, okay? What we're developing is things that someone can develop outside the Buddha's dispensation, okay? We're not in any way in something that only someone who's practicing in a Buddhist dispensation is practicing. Okay? We have to understand that. So our Maitri, whatever it is just very, very basic, baby steps. So we bring whatever wholesome quality we can bring to our minds. So let's say you guys, let's say someone yelled at you, okay? And you get angry. Then you think, no, angry and getting angry is bad. The Buddha teaches anger brings bad results. It brings bad karma. And you suppress the anger. And then you think, may this person who yelled at me become well. May he be happy. He's only yelling at me because he's unhappy. If everyone was happy, then anger wouldn't come. Just like I want to be happy, he wants to be happy. Whatever way you think, whatever way you can practice some Dhamma recollection, you reflect on that and you bring some kind of, let's say in that moment, some kind of metta or a mind of loving kindness. And you think, may he be well. But now you just said a word. You haven't developed anything. That thought, now you have to develop. So the third step was bringing about a kusalayak or a wholesome quality that we don't have. So we got rid of anger, prevented anger from coming again, and then we brought about a mind of loving kindness. Now we brought the mind, we changed our mind to a different thing, but now we have to develop it further. Then he spreads, not just to him, maybe everyone in my workplace wants to be happy. If we were all happy, none of these problems would arise. May all these people be well. May all they be happy. Now this is not saying that sentence, okay? Practice developing this is not saying that sentence word for word. It's developing that actual genuine feeling or thought of loving kindness. And I can't show you and be like, this is loving kindness. Do you see this? This is love. I can't show you that. At that moment, if you have genuine loving kindness, you will know you have genuine loving kindness. It's something you experienced. For example, let's say you want to help someone you love in your life. Let's say you want to help your mother. When you get a thought, hey, I should help my mom, that thought has genuine loving kindness because you don't do it nagging or complaining. You do it with genuine concern, with genuine compassion. Whenever that's there, you can tell that you have loving kindness there. You want this person to be happy. Does that make sense? So that kind of thought, that kind of loving kindness is what we're talking about here. Not just saying that sentence. Maybe there's not even a sentence. You don't have to say words. You don't have to think those words. But that feeling you try to develop, that thought of loving kindness you try to develop. That's the fourth step. So whatever wholesome quality that arose, you try to develop that further. Does that make sense? So I'll give another example. Let's say you're scrolling through Facebook and you see a mean comment about you. Someone's commented something bad about you. So you see that and anger arises. And then you think, hey, this anger arose because I saw something with my eyes. So right now, my eyes, this form, and my eye consciousness came together, and that unhappy feeling arose. But that unhappy feeling arose because of this eye, because of this form, and because of eye consciousness, because of eye contact. Eye contact is made up of impermanent things. Then this feeling is also impermanent. There's no point keeping anger because this is something impermanent, something that changes. In a few minutes, I won't be angry anymore. Then reflecting on impermanence, he abandons anger. So what did he do? He abandoned anger, prevented anger from rising again, and he developed impermanence. And then he tries to develop that thought of impermanence even further. So he doesn't just stop there, he tries to go further than that. Not thinking those same words, but whatever way he can see that, whatever way he can develop something wholesome, he uses that. Maybe it obviously doesn't lead to aranship for all of us, but it leads to maybe seeing a glimpse of reality in our world. Does it make sense? And then someone asked, Bhante, where does wisdom enter into the 7 enlightenment factors in Dhammā-viccaya? So the Noble Eightfold Path is split Sila, Samadhi, Prajna. So first, someone with the foundation of Sila then develops Samadhi. Then through Samadhi, he's able to develop his wisdom. So wisdom isn't mentioned in those 7 factors like word for word, but someone who has those 7 factors, is having the wisdom, because wisdom is explained in certain suttas as the ability to see the Four Noble Truths. So with those 7 factors, all 7 factors, his wisdom is also developing, because his ability to see the Four Noble Truths is what's developing there. Does it make sense? So you can't say this factor is wisdom, this factor is not wisdom. All 7 factors support wisdom. And then someone asked, 𝗪𝗡𝗺 or like the effort to remove laziness. So that is also just worldly effort, like normal effort. Someone, when they first start, maybe, for example, maybe you think, I don't feel like meditating today. So what happened? A nivarana, dullness, arose in us. So then you think, no, if I break my practice, I'm gonna lose whatever benefits I have already. I'm gonna lose my progress. So I should meditate even for 5 minutes. And then that person, then with worldly effort, he goes and meditates. That also is just normal effort. Someone who develops that further can come to actually developing these factors, something that leads to enlightenment, something way beyond what we're talking about. But that first step is what we need to practice in order to get to the second step. So practicing that is very, very good. That's what we have to do. Then someone asked, Swayanga said, do we have an arahant in this time? Are you asking my personal opinion? Not my, I can really say no. That's the answer. No. And like a lot of times people say, like, if you like a lot of lay people say, hey, this Swayanga is an arahant, that Swayanga is an arahant, that Swayanga is definitely either stream enter, Sotapanna. But there's no way for a lay person to know this Swayanga is an arahant, this Swayanga is stream enter, this Swayanga is anagami, sakadagami. How can the Buddha says there's one person who gives dana and he says, I'm Supreme Buddha, I only give dana to arahants. And then the Supreme Buddha says, how can you, as a lay person, say this Swayanga is an arahant, this Swayanga is not an arahant? How can you do that? So every time you hear every time you hear someone say this Swayanga is an arahant, that Swayanga is an arahant, it has no benefit to us. It's completely useless to us. Why? Even if this entire world became arahants, you are not an arahant. Your problem is not solved. We have to look at our problem. If everyone in the world became arahant, does that solve my problem? No, completely useless. Our problem is we ourselves need to become enlightened. In order to do that, someone needs to practice the Dhamma. In order to do that, someone needs to hear the Dhamma. Someone needs noble friends. Someone needs then to attend wisely, have wise consideration, and then he has to practice the Dhamma. That solves our problem. No matter how many monks develop Satipaṭṭhāna, it doesn't matter if you don't develop it, right? So even if, let's say there's a person here who's an arahant, it helps us in no way. Why? Because whatever he's developed, it doesn't help us. We have to practice the Buddha's Dhamma. Do you ever read, okay, Ananda Maharaj, this is our Ananda Maharatang's way to becoming enlightened? This is Arahant Sariputta's way to becoming enlightened? That's completely useless. There's no way, because all of them, whenever they get asked, they say, let's go ask the Supreme Buddha. Let's see what the Supreme Buddha says about this. So when someone says to you, hey, that monk is saying a shortcut, that monk is teaching a way to become enlightened, right there is already, there's red flags. Why? If that monk is truly enlightened, he wouldn't say, hey, this is how you become enlightened. That monk would say, hey, this is what the Supreme Buddha taught, follow this. Because there's only one arahant who became an arahant without any teacher, and that's the Supreme Buddha. every other arahant all became enlightened after hearing the Buddha's teachings. Their confidence in the Buddha is max, 100%. It's complete. So then they would never say, hey, come listen to me, listen to what I'm saying. The arahant wouldn't do that. So then understand, if there's a monk literally saying I'm an arahant, that's 100% sure not an arahant. Why? Because monks have a precept saying you can't tell lay people that you have any special qualities. So then you know for sure that monk is not an arahant. I'm just saying this not to insult anyone, but you guys should be aware and not get tricked. And that actually comes about with some kind of Dhamma knowledge. That's why you should read this yourself. You should read the Buddha's teachings yourself. And then once you read the Buddha's teachings yourself, you can compare and say, hey, this matches the Buddha's teachings. This doesn't match the Buddha's teachings. And if someone says something that you don't understand, or is this completely beyond your understanding, you should ask, so where is this, what sutta is this from? What discourse is this from? Where did the Buddha teach this? Why did the Buddha teach this part? You should always ask that. Otherwise, where's the fact checking? Where's the citations? Where's the resources from? Like, I could have just sat here for an hour and just made something up and you guys wouldn't know. Right? If I said 𝗵𝗫 Sambojjhanga is the effort to not fall asleep, you guys would say, yeah, that's true. And would you guys know that's wrong? How would you know I'm lying? So that comes with a certain trust and a Dhamma knowledge. So that Dhamma knowledge is very, very important, whether you're a monk or a lay person. You should try to develop that yourself. That would help you solve your problem. Understand? And someone asks, Bhante, isn't that we should not attach to rituals also? Is practicing meditation also not a ritual? So this is wrong. So clinging, yes, there's clinging, and it says wrong, okay, clinging to wrong rituals and practices. That's what it says, right? It says clinging to wrong rituals and practices. So I'll give you an example. There's a lot of people, I'll say in the world, because I don't want to insult anyone, who on the New Year's Day, they boil milk, and when it overflows, they think their year will be good and successful. Does it make sense? How does boiling milk lead to a good and successful year? Now, if that was true, then those people should have a very good, successful year. But their year is just as bad as everyone else's. So when did boiling milk ever lead to that result? So then you can say this is a wrong ritual and practice. And the Buddha explains he explains in the Dhamma, these are wrong rituals. There's some people in the Buddhist time, they thought if someone entertains others by dancing, by singing, by doing shows, then that person goes to a good destination. And then they come and ask the Buddha and they say, for generations, my parents' parents, my great-grandparents, all these people have taught me that if I entertain others, then I'll go to a heavenly place, to a good destination. Is this true? And the Buddha says, don't ask me that. And then he asks again. Again, the Buddha says, don't ask me this. 3 times this happens, and then the Buddha says, since you asked 3 times, I told you not to ask me 3 times, but the answer is, anyone who increases someone else's desire and craving for things, that person creates bad karma. And if someone has the view that by entertaining others, they go to a good place, then that also will take them to a bad place, just the view itself. So if someone, like for example, some people might think comedians probably collect lots of good karma. They make others laugh, they ease others' pain, they must be collecting lots of good karma. Even actors and actresses, by letting someone have relief when they're sad, by seeing a show, they must have lots of good karma. But what are they actually collecting? Bad karma. And if someone has the view, that's not true, by doing acting, they'll go to a good place, that view itself is enough to take someone to a bad place. So those are wrong rituals and practice. Those are all things that we have a wrong grasp. That's why a Buddha needs to arise in the world to teach us this is wrong, this is right. No one else does that. I hope that answers that question. So meditation is not a wrong ritual because someone is practicing meditation in the Buddha's teaching, as the Buddha taught it, that becomes Samma Sati, Samma Samadhi. So always understand the Noble Eightfold Path is the right Samma portion. The Mithya or the wrong portion exists in the world as well. All kinds of Mithya Sati, all kinds of Mithya Samadhi. You can get Samadhi just by thinking about one word. You can think hello and just get Samadhi from the word hello. You can just think that over and over again and bring your mind concentrated on the word hello. That's wrong Samadhi, but that will never take you to Nibbana, okay? Your mind will get concentrated. You'll have Samadhi, but you won't ever get rid of anger or lust or delusion. There's a big difference there. And someone said, which rituals did the Buddha teach are good and which rituals and skillful rituals to practice? So the good rituals are practicing the Dhamma. Practice the Buddha's teachings, practice, and it's not just, hey, this is the only right answer. You should practice this because all answers are wrong. That's why I said you should read this yourself. Then you'll see the Buddha's teachings is very, very a clear path with one goal, with no other purpose. The only goal in the Buddha's teachings is to take someone to the complete removal of suffering. And you can completely understand that because the Buddha gives a simile. Imagine you're on an island, okay? Let's say you're at some place and there's a river in front of you. Now the side you're on is very, very dangerous. Let's say there's dangerous animals, it's getting dark, you have no place to stay. Then across that river, you see there's a very, very calm place. It's very, very safe. Maybe there's houses, maybe there's other people. Now, what does this person do? This person takes some trees, takes some vines, and he builds a small raft. And using his hands, he crosses over that water. And then when he comes to safety, should he pick up that raft, put it on his shoulder, and walk around? Does that make sense? Should he take that raft everywhere? Yes or no? No, he shouldn't take that raft. That doesn't make any sense. Why? Even though that raft has been helpful to him, it's done its job. In the same way the Buddha teaches, once someone has crossed over this suffering, once someone has become enlightened, they don't need the Dhamma anymore. They don't need to cling to that anymore. The Buddha says abandon that as well. Don't cling to the Dhamma. So then this teaching is not, hey, this is the only right teaching. You have to cling to this. Make sure you spread this around the world. This is you practice this for your benefit. Once you've finished your job, let go of that as well. It's only one goal in the Dhamma. Complete removal of suffering. Once someone achieves that, there's nothing they need to grasp anymore. That's why when someone becomes a stream mentor, the Buddha says, I don't need to look at him anymore. He'll go on his path. I don't need to go around and poke at him and whisper in his ear. He'll continue the path, whether I'm there or not. But getting to that stage is what we want to do. Okay, I will take one more question. So I answered, do you get angry if you couldn't practice meditation for one day for some reason? Is it me? Like me, do I get angry? That would be very silly if someone then they haven't meditated, if they get angry just because they couldn't meditate. So meditation is not sitting down, okay? That's completely different. Meditation is not just sitting down, and meditation should be done as soon as you wake up, you should be meditating. As you're cooking, you should be meditating. As you're doing your job, you should be meditating. What does that mean? Meditating means you're developing something, a wholesome quality. You're developing this mind. You're getting rid of anger and developing something wholesome. That could be while you're cooking. That could be while you're eating. So monks, as they eat, if you guys have ever offered dana, They say a little verse in Pali. They say, what they're saying is, I eat this alms food, not for pleasure, not for joy, not to fatten this body, not to build muscles. I only eat this alms food for the continuance of this body, to get rid of painful feelings, tiredness, hungriness, the inability to think, and to stop new painful feelings from arising, to stop hunger from arising in the future, to stop tiredness from arising in the future. I eat this alms food only for the continuance of this life, so I can practice the Dhamma. That thought itself is developing the mind. Why? He's not eating that alms food with greed. He's eating it with a purpose. He's eating it with a goal in mind, not just, I'm going to stuff my face and experience all kinds of joy. He's eating it with mindfulness. He's meditating. So don't take meditation as, I'm just going to sit down for 2 hours. That's also meditation. That's also something we should practice. But meditation is not just that. Meditation is when someone writes that mean Facebook comment, not getting angry, that's you're developing your mind there. So at every moment, it should be us trying to develop our minds. Understand? So I hope that makes sense. So today we learned, so we're at the very, very last stage. Next week will be the final lesson, or maybe the second final lesson on Satipaṭṭhāna, and then we'll be finished that. So today we learned the Supreme Buddha's teachings, and we collected lots of merit. All the merit we collected, we share with all the devas. May all the devas rejoice in this merit. May all the devas provide righteous protection to all these lay devotees and their families. May all the devas have the good fortune to escape from this long journey of birth and death. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. We share all the merit we collected with our teacher, 𝗵𝗺 who taught us the Dhamma in this era, with all the monks of Mahamevnawa, with 𝗵𝗺 May all the monks training in the Buddha's dispensation be happy and well. May they all be able to realize the Four Noble Truths in this Gautama Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. We share all the merit we collected with all these lay devotees that joined with their relatives and loved ones. May all these lay devotees be happy, healthy, and well. May you all have long lifespan. May you all be able to realize the Four Noble Truths and escape from this long journey of birth and death. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Everyone chant with me. Kayena vacha chittena pamadena maya katang acchayang kamame bhante bhuri panya tathagata. Kayena vacha chittena pamadena maya katang acchayang kamame dhamma sanditthika akalika. Kayena vacha chittena pamadena maya katang acchayang kamame sangha punyakhetang anuttara. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. I will chant a blessing for you all. Abhivadana 𝗙liche niccang vaddāpaචāyino Cattaro dhamma vaddanti ayuvanno sukham balang ayurārogya sampatti sagga sampatti mevaca ato nibbana sampatti iminate samijjatu. May you all be happy, healthy, and well. 𝗪ᵣ Saranai Namo Buddhaya.
May we chant the forgiveness stanza, Sanat.
Okay.
Dear devotees, let's go to the floor and worship 𝗵𝗺 Okasa vandami bante maya katam punyang samina anumoditabang
Sadhu sadhu anumodami.
samina katam punyang maihan databang
Sadhu sadhu anumodite.
sadhu sadhu anumodami okasa dwaratena katam sabbang acchayang kamatame bante
Kamami kamitabang.
okasa kamami bante dutiyampi okasa kamami bante tatiyampi okasa kamami bante.
You all be happy and well. 𝗪ᵣ Saranai Namo Buddhaya.